The global arms market isn't just about weapons. It's a battlefield of choices where politics, money, survival, and national pride collide. Every year, billions of dollars change hands as countries search for the perfect fighter jet. Not just something that looks powerful, but something they can actually afford, maintain, and control. On one side of this battlefield stands the Eurofighter Typhoon, a symbol of European ambition. Built by a powerful alliance, the UK, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Fast, aggressive, technologically impressive. A true high-performance beast designed to dominate the skies. On the other side stands Saab Gripen. No giant consortium, no overwhelming political muscle. Just a small Nordic nation, Sweden, offering a fighter that many once dismissed as an underdog. And yet, this dark horse keeps winning deals. Here's where the story gets interesting. Despite the Typhoon's raw power and prestige, smaller nations across Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America keep choosing Gripen instead. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Countries that face real threats, real budget limits, real operational constraints. So the question isn't which jet is stronger on paper. The real question is far more uncomfortable. Why are smaller nations defying expectations and turning away from one of Europe's most advanced fighters? What does Gripen offer that the Typhoon doesn't? And most importantly, what does this say about how modern air power is actually bought today? Because in this export war, performance alone doesn't decide the winner. And in the next section, we'll uncover the philosophy behind these two fighters and how one was designed for superpowers while the other was built for survival. When fighter jet deals are announced, headlines usually focus on one number, the purchase price. But in the real world of defense planning, that number is often the least important part of the story. Let's start with the obvious. The Eurofighter Typhoon is expensive. Not just expensive, strategically expensive. Depending on configuration, its upfront acquisition cost can reach levels that instantly disqualify it for smaller air forces. For nations with limited defense budgets, that single number alone can be a deal breaker before negotiations even begin. The Gripen, by contrast, enters the room with a completely different philosophy. Lower purchase cost, modular upgrades, flexible financing options. But here's the critical mistake many people make. They stop comparing after the purchase price. And that's where Gripen truly pulls ahead. Because a fighter jet isn't bought for a day. It's bought for 30 to 40 years. And over that lifetime, the real cost explosion comes from maintenance hours, spare parts logistics, fuel consumption, pilot training, ground crew requirements. This is where the Typhoon's power becomes a liability. It requires large maintenance teams, specialized infrastructure, and high operating budgets just to keep it flying regularly. For smaller nations, this often leads to a painful reality. They own an advanced jet, but can't afford to fly it as often as they should. Gripen was designed to avoid exactly that trap. It uses fewer ground crew, consumes less fuel, can operate from short, rough runways, and was built to be serviced quickly, sometimes in under an hour. That means more flight hours, better pilot readiness, and lower strain on national budgets. And this leads us to the economic reality smaller nations understand better than anyone else. For them, air power isn't about owning the most powerful machine on paper. It's about owning a fighter they can actually sustain in a crisis. Because an aircraft sitting in a hangar due to budget limits is useless, no matter how advanced it is. This is why smaller nations prioritize value over brute force, why reliability beats prestige, and why Gripen keeps winning competitions where Typhoon technically outclasses it. In modern defense planning, the best fighter is the one you can afford to fly every day, not just admire on brochures. And next, we'll go even deeper into politics, sovereignty, and control, where the gap between these two jets becomes even more decisive. In air power, there's a brutal truth most brochures never mention. A fighter jet is only as strong as where, how, and how often it can operate. This is where Gripen's philosophy sharply separates it from the Eurofighter Typhoon. From day one, Gripen was designed for simplicity. Not simplicity in capability, but simplicity in operation. It requires fewer ground crew, less specialized support equipment, and far lighter infrastructure compared to heavyweight European fighters like the Typhoon. For smaller nations, this matters more than speed or top-end performance. Because not every air force has massive hardened air bases, large technical manpower pools, endless logistics budgets. The Typhoon, powerful as it is, assumes those things exist. Gripen assumes they don't. And that brings us to one of its most underestimated strengths: dispersed operations. Unlike most modern fighters, Gripen was built to operate away from traditional air bases. We're talking about short, rough runways, temporary forward strips, and yes, public highways converted into runways. This isn't a marketing trick, it's a survival doctrine. For nations with limited air bases, or those facing stronger adversaries, this capability changes everything. If your enemy can't predict where your fighters will take off from, they can't neutralize your air force on the ground. The Typhoon, by contrast, depends on well-prepared, secure bases. That's fine for major powers, but it's a serious vulnerability for smaller states. Now add adaptability to the equation. Gripen's modular design allows nations to tailor the aircraft to their specific operational needs. Want to integrate local weapons, different sensors, customized communication systems? Gripen makes that process faster and cheaper, without dragging every change through a multinational approval nightmare. Eurofighter, being a multi-nation program, often requires complex political and industrial coordination even for relatively small modifications. And that slows everything down. For smaller nations, this flexibility isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Because threats evolve quickly, budgets change, politics shift, and the air force that adapts fastest survives longest. So while the Typhoon represents centralized power and top-tier performance, Gripen represents resilience. A fighter designed not just to fight, but to keep fighting when conditions are worst. And next, we'll uncover another uncomfortable truth: how political pressure, export restrictions, and sovereignty quietly influence why smaller nations keep saying yes to Gripen and no to the Typhoon. When nations buy fighter jets, they're not just buying aircraft, they're buying relationships, they're buying dependencies, and sometimes they're buying political obligations they never asked for. This is where the Gripen's appeal becomes quietly powerful. Unlike the Eurofighter Typhoon, a program spread across multiple European governments, Gripen comes from one nation, one export authority, one decision-making chain, one set of rules. And that difference matters. Because with multi-nation projects like Typhoon, every export deal can trigger a diplomatic maze. Veto risks from partner countries, shifting political priorities, delays tied to elections and foreign policy disputes. For smaller nations, that uncertainty is dangerous. Gripen offers what defense planners describe as no strings attached, or at least far fewer strings. Not because Sweden lacks interests, but because it isn't trying to control foreign policy outcomes through weapons exports. And that leads directly into technology transfer. Gripen deals are famous for something Eurofighter customers often struggle to get: real industrial participation, local maintenance, domestic assembly, access to software layers, training local engineers instead of locking them out. This empowers recipient nations to maintain, upgrade, and support their own fleets without constant foreign permission. With Typhoon, technology access is far more restricted, partly by design, partly by politics. For smaller air forces, this creates long-term dependence. If relations sour, support can slow, upgrades can stall, capabilities can quietly degrade. Gripen buyers see this risk clearly. And then there's the bigger strategic picture: geopolitical entanglement. Choosing Typhoon often ties a country more tightly into large power blocks, their defense industries, and their political expectations. For some nations, that's acceptable, even desirable. But for smaller states seeking strategic autonomy, it's a liability. Gripen offers a way to modernize air power without surrendering decision-making control. It allows nations to cooperate internationally without being absorbed politically. In a world where alliances shift and pressure travels fast, the ability to say, "This is our aircraft on our terms," carries enormous weight. And that's why, again and again, smaller nations choose sovereignty over status. Next, we'll move from theory to reality by looking at real-world buyers who faced this exact choice and why they picked Gripen. For critics of the Gripen, the argument is familiar. Yes, it's affordable, but can it survive the future? The answer lies in one word: evolution. Gripen didn't freeze in time. With the Gripen E and F variants, Saab quietly transformed the aircraft into something far more formidable. Advanced AESA radar, improved electronic warfare systems, greater range and payload, modern data link and sensor fusion. Not flashy headlines, but exactly the upgrades that matter in real combat environments. And crucially, these upgrades were done without exploding costs. This is where the global air power equation is changing, because modern air superiority is no longer defined by speed alone, size alone, or brute force dominance. It's defined by availability, by survivability, by networked awareness, and by whether a nation can keep its fighters flying day after day, year after year. Smaller nations understand this reality better than anyone else. They don't need an aircraft designed for expeditionary wars across continents. They need one that can defend national airspace, respond quickly, survive first strikes, and operate independently under pressure. Budgets are tighter, threats are more unpredictable, and political alignments are far less stable than they once were. In that environment, the definition of a superior fighter has changed. And this is why, when export wars play out behind closed doors, Gripen keeps coming out on top. Because it doesn't force countries to choose between capability and affordability, power and sovereignty, technology and independence. It offers all three, in balance. So while jets like the Eurofighter Typhoon remain symbols of elite power, Gripen represents something more practical and more dangerous to underestimate. It is a fighter designed not for prestige, but for real-world survival. And in today's global arms market, that makes Gripen the quiet champion for smaller nations. Not because it promises everything, but because it delivers what actually matters.